There's a cowboy coming to Atlantic City, and he's looking for a fight. Welcome in to MMA Live Extra. My name is Todd Grisham. Donald Cowboy Cerrone squares off against Jim Miller on Wednesday night at UFC Fight Night 45. It's a lightweight battle. And for more on this fight, we welcome in our MMA writer for ESPN.com from Las Vegas, Nevada, Brett Okamoto. Brett, this fight seems to have all the potential of a huge firework display. What are you expecting?
Yeah, I mean, certainly stylistically, it does seem like Jim Miller, Donald Cerrone, they never seem to be in a boring fight. Both guys get after it. They tend to get after it pretty early. I think adding to that is what's at stake in this fight. And, you know, both of these guys have climbed the ladder before. They've put together win streaks in the UFC, but they just haven't been able to get over that hump and win the big one and get into a UFC title shot. Neither Cerrone or Miller have ever fought for a UFC title. So if you're looking at this fight, you're saying the loser sort of falling into that murky water of being a gatekeeper. You got to wonder if the loser will ever really bounce back and get to that opportunity. So a lot at stake on Wednesday.
Donald Cerrone has won his last 3 fights by stoppages, impressive fashion, but it seems like every time he gets on a roll, gets closer to a title shot, he takes a step back. What specifically does he need to do to get his arm raised on Wednesday?
Yeah, for Donald Cerrone, it is really about the mental part of the game. And that's not to say that Jim Miller is not a great fighter and doesn't present some challenges stylistically, but Cerrone, he is the better striker of the two. He's got great defensive wrestling, great defensive submission skills, which is what Jim Miller likes to go out and try and submit guys. So it's about Cerrone coming out and not being flat. You know, this guy has a real long reputation of coming out, starting slow, getting hit too much. Jim Miller is a guy who can take advantage of that if Cerrone gives him the opportunity. So I've spoke to Cerrone. For him right now, it's about not thinking about fighting too much. It's about getting out, enjoying his life, not putting pressure on himself to try and go out and win a UFC title, just having fun in the cage. It seems like he's been doing it lately. But as you mentioned, there's always a possibility in a big fight like this that Cerrone's going to show up and just be flat. We've seen it before. Hopefully it doesn't happen on Wednesday.
Jim Miller is from New Jersey. The last 2 times he's fought in his home state against Nate Diaz and Pat Healy. He was submitted, although the Pat Healy decision was overturned because of a positive marijuana test. What does he need to do, Jim Miller, to send the home fans home happy?
Well, I think it's about taking advantage of what we talked about earlier with Cerrone's slow starts, is to get in his face pretty quickly. I think that's the lesser of 2 evils. You don't want to stand on the outside, take leg kicks, take front kicks from Donald Cerrone, who's a bigger guy. I think Miller wants to close the distance. He's got underrated boxing. He throws good combinations. He's pretty accurate when he fires off to the chin. And as I mentioned before, Cerrone can be hit. So if Miller can catch him early on in this fight, possibly set up and use his wrestling, which he's going to try and do. I know that Donald Cerrone is a tough guy to take down and to try and submit, but that doesn't mean Miller's not going to try. That is his bread and butter. So I would not be surprised to see Miller come out guns blazing, because I think the longer this fight goes, the more comfortable Donald Cerrone gets, the less good it is for Jim Miller. I think he's got to put this one away early.
No one's had more submission attempts in UFC history than Jim Miller, so you'd think if he does win this fight, it will be by submission. But, Brett, it's time for you to go on the record. Who wins?
I'm going to take Donald Cerrone. I think it's a tough fight to pick Jim Miller, just because everything Miller does, Cerrone seems to match up very well. I think it's going to be a stand-up fight that Donald Cerrone forces, and you got to favor Cerrone in a stand-up fight. He's one of the best strikers at 155 pounds. It's all about, does he come out, does he take care of business, does he look ready to go early? I think he will. I think he's in a good spot mentally. I like him to win the fight and finish Jim Miller.
That is Brett Okamoto, our MMA writer for ESPN.com from Las Vegas. We appreciate the insight, Brett. Make sure you stay tuned here to ESPN.com for post-fight highlights of Wednesday night's UFC Fight Night 45, headlined by Jim Miller and Donald Cowboy Cerrone. That'll do it for this edition of MMA Live Extra. My name is Todd Grisham. Until next time, keep fighting.